we were here in the West Shore area, and what we do in the roundtable, there were 9 CEOs present, and everybody signs confidentiality statements, which is a big thing to the CEOs. And you guys are like that too. You're all confidentiality oriented, right?
Right.
I know you are. You're sometimes reminding your CEOs that they better be confidentiality oriented. So I know that. So anyway, as my role as facilitator is to say, okay, does anybody have an issue they want to bring to the group or an opportunity? So one of the guys in the group, Bill, was a little reluctant, but he said, look, it's kind of a half-baked thing, but I have to tell you, I got really caught off guard by something I wanted to bring to the group. And everybody's kind of curious, what is that? Because, Bill's kind of one of those guys that usually isn't caught off guard. He goes, somebody made an offer to buy my business, and I didn't expect it. And so I talked to my wife, Karen, and she went, I'm using false names, by the way. Confidentiality. Just in case. Yeah. I know you would say that. Because you're the people who allow me in to talk to them or not. I'm forever indebted because most of you, like Heidi and Joelle, actually get me in there to communicate. So anyway, he was saying, I would like to talk a little bit about this, but my wife doesn't. My wife would like me to sell this business because she doesn't see me enough. And I have a couple of board members in formal board. Some of you might identify with this, depending on how big your organization is or if it's a for-profit organization. They were saying these board members / minority shareholders probably want to cash out. It's been a while, so okay, who else can they talk to? You. Right? So the voice of reason in this situation was this person's executive assistant. And he said to the group, she really asked me some very good questions. Nobody else did. My wife said sell it, they said sell it. And so she's helping me weigh out the pros and cons. And she said, you have your CEO meeting, you should really bring it up. And of course, Bill, being, sort of analytical and perfect, didn't think he was ready to bring this up yet. And she goes, no, you need to bring this up. And so he brings it up in the group, okay? So the group begins then to address his issue. So that's what happens in one of these peer roundtables. So the process is that you take 10 to 15 minutes, usually it's more like 15 to 20, to present your issue. What are the pertinent facts? What do I need from the group, right? And then that person, Bill in this case, has to zip it, and everybody asks questions. They use a Socratic approach. So you find out what you know and don't know about an issue by the questions people ask you, right? So sometimes when somebody asks you a good question, you think, wow, I never thought about that. And it really gives you a perspective. So that was going on. And then after the questioning, each person, each CEO on the roundtable goes around, and for a facilitator, this is hard because they each give their feedback. And what we don't want them to do is give the feedback and discuss it. Why would we not want to do that?
You never get through the whole
You never get through the whole thing. Plus, the introverted, brilliant CEO at the end of the line never gets to tell their solution, which is probably the best one, right? So everybody has to, and I told Bill, I said, Bill, you just write down what they're saying. Just write down their recommendations. Don't talk. Because Bill wants to, well, what do you mean by that? I tried that. No, you can't say that, Bill. So I'm really herding cats too. That's what I do for a living. So they go around, they give their feedback, and then we discuss it. And then I always say, what are the 2 or 3 things you heard that you're going to act on? Okay? And I make a note of it, and people remember, and at the next meeting, we say, okay, what progress have you made? So if people don't make progress, sometimes they don't come to the next meeting. But usually, they like their group so much, they come back. So why am I telling you all this about your CEOs? You hear enough about them all day. Why am I telling you about this? Because that same process could be so powerful for you as a peer group. To have an opportunity among like-minded peers to bring your issues to each other and give each other that kind of airtime to really resolve or get ideas on how to do things differently. The power of peer groups, there are 3 characteristics that I think are really important to know. One is that it's lonely at the top, right? It really is. So these CEOs feel isolated. How many of you in this room, because of your role, feel isolated sometimes? Yeah. Is it lonely at the top? Absolutely it is for you. The same thing. And so they go to this group and they're sitting there and they're saying, gee, nobody has a vested interest in telling me, like my wife did, to tell me to sell my business, right? In Bill's case, nobody has a vested interest in telling me anything other than they want to help me and they want to share my experience, their experience. So that is a very, very powerful thing. Beyond the CEO groups, a couple years ago, we started something called the True North Women's Forums. And this is for women in leadership roles. In fact, TriBridge, Kathy Killingsworth is in one of our True North Women's Forums. And these women experience the same thing. They're in leadership roles. They may not be the CEO, but there aren't that many of them. And they feel isolated. And so they bring up issues like, this is my discipline. I gave my advice. The whole executive team, by the way, they're all men, said, why are you even suggesting this? This doesn't make sense to me. And so they get support from their peer group. They get ideas on how to represent it, right? So these peer forums and this principle of it's lonely at the top is not just for a CEO. It's for people who feel that way. The second real key characteristic of peer groups that I think are really beneficial for you is that there's a collective wisdom in a group. And so if you might not know how to do something, and I swear in this room, if I presented some issue or problem and I said, do you know anybody? I think I would walk out with at least 10 good suggestions, right? Because the collective wisdom is amazing. But in our work, unless we have a structure, like a peer forum, we don't get to it, right? It's like reading a good book. When do you get to read? Or maybe you read a chapter, unless you feel guilty about that, feel like if you start a book, you have to read the whole book, like my husband. You know, having a structure where you can tap into that collective wisdom is really important. And I was talking to Joelle a little bit, and we were talking, and I said, give me some examples. And she said, well, we had this meeting, we talked about board meeting notes. And how many of you were involved with that, right? How much time did that save you, right? Those of you could, yeah. You know, some of you already know, but others don't, and that's, yeah. So that's the other principle behind doing something like this, right? And then the third one is the network. It's just the network of knowing who knows who. We were talking about office space, and, you know, we're talking about, you know, where can you go and who could you talk with, and you know, Christina was getting all these different suggestions from people who Phyllis was, you know, had done that and done it across state lines, and just different networking things that are not necessarily like a big issue, but resources, right? So thinking about when you meet, having a structure where you can bring an issue to the group in confidence. And you know, you have to kill anybody that breaks that confidence, but you're already good at that. You're already good at that. You do that all the time. Like any other group, but not you guys. I mean, you're better than your CEOs, really. And I know that for a fact, because they tell me that.
They talk about it.
Yeah, they talk about it, yeah. I have to remind them, hey, isn't that confidential? No. So doing it, so it's lonely, but you have this wisdom from the group, and then you have the network. It's really very, very powerful. So before we break, I want to do an exercise with you. I want to do an exercise around networking, because I want you to get some value added, and I want you to meet some of the other people in this group that you might not know. So I'm going to use a process that's called Feed Forward. A good friend of mine and an executive coach, Marshall Goldsmith, created this process. You know feedback, right? So when you get feedback, it's on something that's already occurred. Right? So sometimes it's good, and sometimes, you know, it's not great to hear, right? So we're not getting to feedback today. We're going to get into giving people some feed-forward suggestions that they can use in going forward with something they want to know about. Okay, so this is how it's going to work. First of all, I'm going to ask you to all get up. No, don't get up yet, but I'm going to ask you to all get up, just kind of like you were in the other room. And I'm going to ask you to find a partner you don't know well. Okay? You're going to have 2 minutes. You're each going to share a minute. Okay? So the first thing I'd like you to think about before you get there is just pick one thing that you want to get more information on, or learn more about, or get an opinion on. So it might be something like, I'd like some advice on how to be more assertive with outside vendors when they want to get to my CEO. Okay, is that a realistic one, right? Okay, all right. Heidi, you were going to help me.
Yes.
Come over here. So, Heidi, what is your thing you want to get more information on?
Email management for my CEO. I feel like I have my email, I have another email for our company, and then I have his email. And it is my priority, but it's hard. And I would love ideas and ways to kind of file the emails, but still keep them where he can see them, but where I know how to categorize and what to follow up on, etc.
Okay, so that's her thing. She's not going to change it, because we're gonna do this in one pair. It's like a cocktail party. It's speed dating but networking. So let's pretend I'm one of you. So that's gonna be hers. So she's gonna say, Mary, I want ideas on that. Okay. Then she has to zip it, and I make several suggestions, and all she says to me is thank you. We're not going into the context. We're not, we want to hear about her CEO. She's not going to talk anymore other than she wants suggestions. I'm going to give her some suggestions, and then my minute's up. We switch roles. I tell her, I'd like to learn how to be more assertive with vendors. She's going to make some suggestions. I'm going to say thank you. Mary's going to say your time is up, find another partner, and then you're going to use the same issues with someone else. So you're collecting this networking wisdom from each other on the same issue. Okay. Questions or comments about what we're going to do? Okay, does anybody want to get another glass of wine? It's better reasonably sober. Okay. So, thank you. Yes, thank you.